In the last couple of shows, I gave you some tips and tricks on how to pick a computer system, especially related to your lifestyle. So the last piece of that puzzle is connecting to the cloud. All we got to do is figure out what is the cloud. So grab your ticket, climb aboard, and let's get started.
It's time for Computer Train, the weekly TV program that trains you how to use your computer. With your host, El Paso Community College faculty member Russ Myers.
All right, first things first, let's discuss what is the cloud. I think I have discussed it a little bit on the show before, but let's review a couple of terms that we've talked about. Often in my classes, especially the Introduction to Computer classes, I ask everybody, has anybody done any cloud computing? And of course, all of them shake their heads, no, never heard of it, never touched it at all. And then I ask them questions like, well, do you have a Yahoo account? Do you have a Hotmail account? Do you maybe do online banking? And then, of course, quite a few of them say, yes, we've done that. That's cloud computing. So that's just a term meaning the internet. Okay, so let's do another question here. What is the internet really? I'll just give you a little brief example of what that is. Internet comes from the term interconnected network. So there's these computer networks and they're all connected, and that large structure is called the internet. So what we need to do as a home user is connect to that internet, and I want to make sure you learn just a little bit about some key concepts that'll help you make the right decision. Okay, so a little bit of terminology first. When we want to get connected to the internet, what we need is referred to as an ISP. And as you can see, those initials stand for Internet Service Provider. You have to have some company that's going to provide you that connection to the worldwide network. Okay, and there's a couple of different ways that we can do it, and we want to make sure we understand how, and especially related to cost, is what the overall concern is. So one of the first things we need to do is learn about different connection speeds. A lot of people that I talk to, my friends, they really don't understand, and you don't have to understand, you know, down to the network engineer level, but like anything, you need some basic terminology. So I wanted to go over that. All right, so the first thing is, when you're connected to the internet, how well it works, quote unquote, is related to the connection speed. The connection speed is how fast the data travels to your home and how fast the data travels away from your home. And I want to make sure you pick up a couple of terms that you can be looking for. When the data comes to your house, that is called the download. You're downloading something from the internet or the cloud down to your local PC. When you send information from your computer to somewhere else, you're uploading. Okay, so if we leave the computer, we're uploading. Anything we get from our computer downward is called downloading. All right, so related to speeds, speed is measured in a term called megabits. It's often abbreviated M lowercase b ps, and sometimes, since we know that the measurement is per second, oftentimes company will just put the M and lowercase b. We don't put a capital B because that relates to another terminology that I'm going to review in a second. Okay, so that's megabits per second. Just like buying a car, it's not necessary that you understand, okay, what's horsepower? This car has 280 horsepower. This car has 350 horsepower. It's not necessarily important that you can explain what horsepower is, but what you do need to know that is this car is going to be less powerful than a car in general that has more horsepower. So that's the same thing you can do here. Without getting super technical and understanding megabits per second and all this kind of stuff, just understand the larger the number of megabits per second, the faster the data will travel to and away from your house. Okay, but I do want to go, you know, a little bit further level than that. I know you guys are ready for this. All right, so data in general, we've talked about this term before. Like all the files that we have on our computer, that data is measured in a concept called bytes. Okay, notice I didn't say bits, it's bytes. So here's a quick question in case we see it on a trivia show someday. How many bits are in a byte? Anybody know that? No, 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 no. You got to take that Introduction to Computer class that I teach. There are 8 bits per byte. Okay, so if you had 1 byte of data, it's actually 8 bits. Something has to happen to the data in order for it to go across the wires that connect the internet, and that is changing it into bits. Hence how we measure it in megabits per second. But don't worry too much about that. Just remember, the larger the number, the faster the data. But the larger the number and the faster the data, What are we looking at? We're looking at a higher level of cost. So once again, like I was describing in the previous show, we have to determine who we are. What exactly do we need the internet for? And that will help us make some wise financial decisions when we pick an internet service provider. So I downloaded this little chart here, which kind of really describes what I need to see here. All right, so kind of like I was discussing in the last two shows about describing what you do with the computer. So here we're talking about a person with light use. Okay, so some of the main things that they might do, they might send email, they might do some web surfing, nothing wrong with that, kind of basic stuff. They may look at video. When you're in this light use video, and I'm going to discuss in a second, there are some issues you might have to deal with depending on the speed. Because remember, everything coming to your computer is files, measured in bytes, broken into bits. Okay, so whether it's a picture, whether it's a news article, whether it's a video, it has to come to your computer in order for you to see it, hear it. Okay, so moderate use. So you're describing a person here that does all of the things that a basic person might do, but a little bit more. So instead of just streaming a video, they're streaming video in HD, high definition. If you have a high definition file, it's going to be larger. So again, it's going to have to travel to your computer. It's going to take a little bit longer. Video conferencing, that may not be something that everybody does. That's kind of a business term. But don't forget now, home users can also do things like that with Skype. We don't call it necessarily video conferencing like you might in a business. And I have done a show on Skype here before, but remember, your picture has to be sent to whoever you're Skyping with. So that's, again, upload, download speeds. Okay, and then some of the things I discussed in the last show, one of the categories that really separates users to the super high-end is the gamers. Gamers that are involved in internet-type games where they're playing several people in a community all at the same time. In order to do that, as I was discussing in the last show, you have to have a fairly powerful computer and you need a fairly fast connection speed if you want to do it in real time, which is what they would want to do. Okay, and then we have kind of high-use people. These people are going to do everything that is over here. But what separates that is you might be doing several of these at the same time. Okay, so if you're doing several things at the same time, once again, we're going to need more power. All right, so then over here on this left side, we're describing how many users, or really what we're talking about is how many different devices are connected to your internet at a given moment. The more devices that are doing something, or the more people that are doing something, again, we're all using that same speed. It doesn't, miraculously increase. Usually in my internet-based classes, I discuss it like a water hose. You pick a particular size water hose, there's only so much water that can go through it, no matter what you're trying to do. Even if you have multiple extensions to that water hose, one for the grass, one for the plants, there's still only a given amount of water that's coming through. So that internet connection speed can be thought of the same way. You only have so much data, whether you're, like my daughter likes to listen to music or she's doing homework. I might be doing something with my online classes. So you have multiple users using the internet at the same time. They're using that same amount of data. Okay, so here where we come with the numbers. Remember, you don't necessarily have to remember exactly what it stands for and what it means. Just understand the larger the number, the faster the speed. It's pretty straightforward, just like horsepower. Okay, so you can see here, if you're doing light use, for most of it, 1 to 4 megabits per second you're going to be able to handle. And that's kind of the lowest level type of internet connection. It's nice, a lot of people have it because of course it's the most inexpensive. But notice as you start to add more users, if you add more users, so down here we're down to 4 users. So we might have to kick up the speed. Okay, so what happens is if you have an internet speed and you have so many devices or so many people using it at the same time, you're going to have degradation in the signal. So you might be watching a video, but you're not going to be watching consistently. What's going to happen is the video will freeze for a second, and it's doing what we call streaming. So it's bringing more of the file down, then it allows it to play a little bit longer, then it brings more of the file down. If you don't want those things to happen, you need a little bit faster connection speed. Okay, so over here in moderate use, you can see pretty much right away we're going to go to the next level of megabits per second. And then of course the high end right off the bat, even with one device, you're having 16 to 15 megabits per second. And then if you have several devices, you need to have a very fast internet connection speed. Okay, so depending on your usage, how many people perhaps are in your home and you think are going to be using the devices at any given moment. One of the things that's always happening in my house, at least my daughter, she's one of those people that has to constantly listen to music. So she almost always has an internet-based music app going all the time. So I have to compete against that. Of course, I don't have to compete very hard. I just tell her to turn it off, which is pretty easy. All right, so a couple other things that we want to take a look at. All right, so here I've described some of the different terminology and things that you might see in advertising, the newspaper, of businesses that are going to provide this internet connection speed. And there's lots of in between. I'm just giving you kind of the main things to look for and the buzzwords that you might hear, but there are a lot of categories in between. When the internet first came up, we all started with dial-up. Dial-up is through your telephone line. Notice that dial-up is very, very slow connection speed. It's not even measured in megabits per second. You see that K? I don't know if you remember from previous shows. The K stands for kilo. It's 56,000 bits per second instead of million. I remember when the internet first came out, there was no graphics, no music, no video. It was all a text-based system. And the connection speeds were so slow at that time that you could literally see the computer paint the lines one line of text at a time across the screen. Now, of course, you know, it's instantaneous. It's coming to the screen all at once. But make sure you understand it's still coming in bytes, but it's so fast the human eye can't see it anymore. But I do remember the days where it was one line of text at a time being painted on the screen. Very, very slow. Okay, so the next level is DSL. Okay, DSL stands for Digital Subscriber Line. Well, what the technology with the telephone line is, they figured out a way to kind of split the telephone line. So the line, part of the line would be used for your telephone, and then part of the line can be used for your internet connection. In the dial-up days, if you had somebody on the internet using the telephone line, you could not use the telephone. Okay, so now they've increased that. And even with that, the technology has really come a long way. This used to be also relatively slow, but now it's very fast. They actually have another category called ADSL. I think it stands for Asymmetric Digital Subscriber Line, which is even faster. And then they have ADSL Plus. So you might take a look and do a little research on that. Remember, faster speed, more money. Just remember that part. Okay, so with a digital subscriber line, you can get in up to the 7 megabits. So what most companies will do is they'll break it down. So if you want 2 megabits maximum, they'll have a given price. Then if you want up to 4, you pay a little bit more. If you want up to 6, you pay a little bit more. Nice thing about the digital subscriber line is there's really nothing to do. They send you a modem and you connect it to your telephone line system. Nobody has to come and install a satellite dish or, you know, drill holes for coax cable. So it's a really nice connection. It's actually the one that I have for most of my usage. I'm not a gamer or anything like that. I do a little bit of online work with my classes. So I do want a relatively fast one, and I do have a higher level DSL service. Okay, if you want even faster than that, I'm going to skip this one for 1 second and drop down to the broadband. Broadband is, you can think of like Time Warner cable. The system comes through that same coax cable. If you look at your cable system, there's that big thick line that comes up to your TV. That's called a coax cable. So they have coax cables for the broadband connection. Nice thing about broadband connection is you have very fast speeds. Okay, so 10 megabits per second. And again, if you want higher speeds, you pay more, they'll give you more. It's the same thing all the time. Faster speed, more money. One thing that you need to be aware of, depending on where you live, even in places in El Paso, we have, you know, certain little communities on the outskirts of the city, so they may not have the viability of some different types of connections. So what they can do is they can look for a company that will do satellite systems. And that's just like your cable vision. So they'll put a satellite on your house, and instead of a line through your house, it's going to be through a connection through a satellite system. Okay, so the big thing is the numbers. And I want to basically take this one off the board. The dial-up connection is too slow. At this point in the internet, because we have graphics and we have a lot of things going up, dial-up just doesn't work anymore. At least in my opinion, it's completely too slow. You need at least a DSL line to get a couple of megabits per second, even for the web surfing that you might do. A couple of side things I want to show you. Okay, so not too fast. I don't know if we want to go down a little bit so we can see my little smiley face telling us to hold on here. There we go. All right, couple of side things. Remember, when you see advertising for anything, it's not just for internet connection. When you see advertising for anything, they're not going to necessarily tell you in big letters the important things related to that product. So the first thing you want to remember is anytime you see those advertisements of speeds, it's related to download speeds, not upload speeds. Upload speeds are always slower. For the average user, that's not a big deal, but if you're going to do, things like gaming, which your moves and everything you're doing has to be sent to the community, so that you're uploading your actions. If you're doing video conferencing or you're doing things like Skype, remember your picture is being sent somewhere. That's uploading. Okay, so if you're going to do things like that, you might look and make sure that your upload speeds can handle that also. When they advertise in the paper, they're going to be talking about download speeds. All right, the other thing that's important is those advertised speeds are the max that line will handle. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be getting that download speed all the time. That depends on a number of factors. It depends on the type of connection that you have. There's so much to talk about there. I really don't want to get into it too much. But just remember that those are the max speeds advertised, not necessarily what you're going to get day to day. That depends on a lot of other factors. Okay, so if you want to connect to the cloud, you're going to need an ISP, and you're going to need to understand a little bit about how those connections work. Now that we're connected to the cloud, we want to start doing some different things. I did show you a little bit of this related to Windows 8, but now I actually want to download an application such as I've done in the past, and I actually want to use it. Remember, most people that are using apps, the big thing, of course, is games. But there are so many great apps out there that can really help your day-to-day life. So maybe, definitely going to do in this show, maybe a couple other shows. I'm going to go look for some apps. Some of them are the ones that I use and others that my friends are using, and show you some apps that might help us in our day-to-day lives that rather than just playing, candy corn all day. Wait a minute, I said that wrong. It's Candy Crush. Sorry about that. All right, so first thing I want to do is remind you of how to go get an app. Remember, most of the apps that I'm going to be using are all free apps. Each app, there's always a payment you can make to get the purchased app, which of course unlocks other tools. But usually the basic app is what we're all looking for. So in Windows 8, don't forget you're going to go to the Start screen, and you're going to look for the Windows Store. So that's the one with the little shopping bag on it. Well, remember, these are live tiles, so it just changed, of course, when I tried to point to it. So I'm going to go to the store. This particular one that I'm looking for, I'm going to do a search on, is related to keeping lists. That's one of the things that we all do. It could be a shopping list. It could be a list of things that we need to do. Usually related to me is I'm going to create a list for each of my classes. Don't forget to put in an exam. Don't forget to start this. Don't forget to print out the exam for tomorrow. It's just a list to remind me things. So it's a real organizational tool. And there's lots of them out there. Okay, so if I look at all the list tools, there's quite a few out there. So if we just take a quick moment, lots and lots of lists. So the one that I experimented with a couple of them, and the one that I kind of settled on that I like, one of the things that I liked about it is that some of the lists that I put out there, I can make it go to my Gmail calendar, and so I can see it on my phone, I can see it on the internet, I can see it in an app, lots of different places I can see it. So it has a lot of good portability for me. Remember, when I was describing people as users, I'm kind of a worker, so I'm going to do work all over the place. So that kind of drives a lot of my decisions. So the one that I came up with is one I'm using right now called Wunderlist. I guess we should pronounce that as a V because Wunderlist is coming from programmers in Germany. Okay, so I'm going to install Wunderlist. I'm going to say it like an American. Okay, so let's install this app here. By the way, I've also installed that on my phone, and there's also a web-based, you can go straight to wunderlist.com. So once again, lots of different ways to get to it. And what's nice is whether I do it on my phone, whether I do it in the Windows app, whether I do it on the internet, on the actual website, I can see it everywhere. So it is a really great app. Okay, so if we come down here, it's installed, so you can see a new tile here. Okay, so I'm going to go to Wunderlist. Okay, you do have to, like most of these that are web-based, you're going to have to create some kind of account. What was nice about this one is I already had a Microsoft account, so you see here I can use my Microsoft account to sign in. You can also have a Facebook account, you can use your Gmail account, or you can create an account just for the Wunderlist app by itself, so you can decide that. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. All right, so the first thing that you do when you create your list is you don't want to just have all these stray lists, you try to organize them. Okay, so my basic organizational day-to-day list and tasks that I need to do, of course, all relate to teaching. So what we do here is I create a folder for each of the particular classes. So I've created one called Advanced Spreadsheets, and I'll show you that in a second. So first thing to organization is to create these folders. So down here at the bottom, very simple to do it, you have this command button with a little plus sign. Okay, so we're going to click on that, and that's going to allow us to create a new list. Very, very easy to use. So however you organize your life, mine starts off with my classes and what I need to do in my classes day to day. Okay, so we'll give it a list name. My other one was called Advanced Spreadsheets. That's one of the classes I'm teaching right now. I'm teaching another one called Database Programming. By the way, if you ever take that class, fasten your seatbelt because that's a pretty technical class. Okay, so we'll do Create. Oh, while I'm here, let me also describe, I have not used this feature, but notice that if you have other Wunderlist users, you can add them to this list. So anything that I do in this list, they can see on their accounts. So if you're doing some kind of coordination with committee groups or something like that, you can create a list which everybody can see, and that's really nice also. It can be edited by different people. Okay, so now I have two different lists. I have my spreadsheets class and my database programming class. I've already added an item in the list for advanced spreadsheets, so let's go ahead and take a look at what I've done there. Okay, so this is a reminder for me. So here's an item in the list, prepare exam for Friday. This checkbox indicates whether I have completed that task or not. Okay, when you click on one of the tasks, that's hard to say there, a couple other nice things that you can do here. So first of all, I can give myself a due date. Up to what time do I need to get this done? So this is really related to a couple of weeks from now. We're going to have an exam, so I'm reminding myself by March 16th to have this exam created. Just in case I forget, this class is at 11 o'clock in the morning, so I've given myself a reminder. So this reminder is going to go off at 9 a.m. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about there is that reminder. I've tied this account, which I'll show you in a second, of tying this to my Gmail account. My Gmail account is tied to my cell phone. So when that timer goes off to remind me, I'll actually get it on my cell phone, even though I'm doing the task right here. So it's a really nice feature for me, so I don't forget very many things that I have to do. Okay, here are some subtasks. You can put in subtasks for that main one. Okay, so I'm telling myself, don't forget the data file. One of the things that really trips me up, and I try not to do it, is my classes relate to computers, of course, and everything is hands-on. It's just like a driving class. I show the students, so we discuss concepts, what's this, what's that, but at some point they have to drive the car. So all of my exams are hands-on. You have to use the application and complete the task that I show you. In order to make that a little bit faster, I don't want them to have to do everything from scratch, so I create a starting file for them. If I don't modify the starting file related to my instructions, of course it's going to clash and they're not going to know. And I have done that in the past, and I kind of have to scrap the whole exam and hold it another day. So that's what I'm reminding myself there with the subtask. Don't forget the data file. Make sure the instructions and the data file match up. Okay, so pretty easy. With that reminder, this will also go on my Gmail account, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. All right, so let's try another one in my database programming class. Okay, so you can see, pretty easy to use. Now I'm in my database programming file, and I just need to click in here to add a new item. So very simplistic to use, very, very easy. Okay, so I might say prepare database for in-class exercise. Okay, press enter, that's it. Okay, so now I'm getting a task, prepare the database for in-class exercise. That just went on my calendar. Actually, it's a 24-hour syncing process. It's not a real-time syncing, but by tomorrow, if I looked on my calendar, it would be there. I hope they're working on that. It would be really nice if it was real-time, so whatever I do here immediately goes to my Gmail account, but it does take 24 hours. Okay, so here's the new item. If I want to modify it in any way, I can just click on it and do the same thing. Okay, so I could set a due date, a reminder. Here's another nice feature with this one. Some of the tasks that I saw that I was trying to use, it didn't allow me to add files to my list. Remember, everything I do is related, most of it's related to my classes, and my classes, of course, relate to all these files that I'm working with. So Wunderlist allows you to attach files to your task, which is really nice and not something that I saw in all of them. Okay, so if we look down here, add a comment, you can have that paperclip. Paperclip is the standard icon for adding a file to something. So I can click on that, and then I can go get my file. So I'll do that. I'll just pick a file. Let's see, I'll go to my flash drive, class directory, there's my database class. Should we give him the hard one or the easy one? I'll give them the hard one, absolutely. If they had taken this class with another instructor, I probably would give them the easy one. But since they had me as an instructor, they're prepared for the hard one. Okay, so you can see, now I've attached that database. So what's nice is even after I close everything down here, if I go home, or if I went to school, or if I took my laptop to some location, I can get on there and I could download the file at the exact spot I am. I wouldn't have to have my flash drive. It's right there as an attachment. So it's a really wonderful feature. Last thing I want to show you is how to connect it to your Gmail account. If you go to the settings, down here at the bottom, you see it has calendar feed. Okay, so that's a URL to my calendar in Wunderlist. I'm going to attach that URL to my Gmail account. I've already done it, but I'm going to show you how to do it. So very simple. All you got to do is a copy. I already have my Gmail account opened up. All we got to do is find it. Okay, in your calendar. Okay, so in Gmail, here are other calendars. And I actually have shown you this feature in the past when we did a show on Gmail where I can see other people's calendars. So you see there, I have my wife's calendar. So if you go to other calendars, then you click on this option, add by URL. And you just click and paste that URL that I just put in there. Okay, so you copy the URL from your Wunderlist account and paste it into there. So now if you look at my calendars, one of my calendars is the Wunderlist tasks and lists. So anything I do on my phone, if I do it on the internet, if I do it in my app, it's going to be everywhere, and then it'll be on my Gmail account. If it has a reminder, it will remind me on my phone. So it's a fantastic tool. So remember, on the internet and in our apps, it's not all about playing everything. It's about apps that can organize and help us in our day-to-day lives. So I hope you join me next show for another app, and we'll see you again on Computer Train.